On 15 January 2026, the Republic of Uganda held general elections to elect the president and members of parliament. In line with its mandate to promote democracy, peace, and good governance among its member states, and following an invitation from the government of the Republic of Uganda, the African Union, in collaboration with the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa Commercial and Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, deployed an election observation mission from 7th to 19th January 2026. Prior to the deployment of the mission, the African Union and Commercial undertook pre-election assessment mission from 17th to 21st November 2025. The AU Commercial IGAD mission was led by me, Goodluck Jonathan, the former president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, assisted by Ambassador Shamsuddin Ahmed, member of the Commercial Committee of Elders by immediate left, and Commander A. Mullen Bayen, representing IGAD. The mission comprised of 84 short-term observers, including ambassadors accredited to the African Union, officials of election management bodies, civil society organizations, election experts, academics, human rights practitioners, gender and media specialists, and youth representatives. The observers were drawn from 27 African countries covering all the zones of Africa. The joint mission objectives were to A. Assess the extent to which the electoral process complied with African Union principles, norms, and the international obligations. B. Determine whether the political and security environment was conducive for the conduct of peaceful, transparent, and credible elections in Uganda. C. Evaluate the preparedness and performance of the Electoral Commission of Uganda. And D. Formulate recommendations aimed at strengthening future electoral processes. And E. Demonstrate AU Commercial IGAD solidarity with the people of Uganda in their democratic and electoral processes, thereby contributing to peace, stability, good governance, and inclusive development. In line with this methodology, the mission undertook extensive consultation with stakeholders that include the Electoral Commission, the President of the Republic of Uganda, His Excellency Kyagulanyi Museveni, the leader of the main opposition party, the National Unity Platform, Reverend Kyagulanyi, political parties, and other candidates, the Inspector General of Police, the Deputy Chief Justice, and President of the Court of the Deputy Chief Justice and President of the Constitutional Court, relevant government ministries and departments, the Ugandan Human Rights Commission, members of the African and International Diplomatic Corps, civil society organizations, the Ugandan Law Society, the Inter-Party Organization for Dialogue, and media organizations, among others. In addition to the consultations, the mission deployed 31 teams of observers who observed the final phase of campaign and the 15 January 2026 polling day processes in all 5 regions of the country, namely the Western, the Northern, Central, Eastern, and West Nile. This preliminary statement presented the initial findings of the AU Commercial IGAD mission based on observations and consultations with key stakeholders. It provides an analysis of the pre-election environment and election day process and concludes with recommendations to address identified gaps and to strengthen future electoral processes in the Republic of Uganda in line with national laws, continental and international democratic standards. Preliminary findings. The political context. The mission observed that the 15th January 2026 elections marked Uganda's 15th multi-party elections since the 1995 referendum which restored multi-party democracy. The, the consistent holding of elections after every 5 years underscores Uganda's commitment to the principles of holding periodic elections in line with the African Union Declaration on the Principles Governing Democratic Elections in Africa, as well as the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance. The mission noted that the elections were conducted within a political context marked by electoral competition polarized along regional lines, shared concerns regarding denomination of parliamentary candidates after they were duly nominated, given that some of the denominations took place after the printing of ballot papers. Several denominated candidates remained on the ballot papers, risking confusion about the voters. We received reports from opposition political parties and other stakeholders concerning restrictions in accessing campaign venues, unequal access to political parties' funding, biased media coverage, costly nomination fees, intimidation, abduction, and arbitrary arrest of opposition party officials and supporters, civil society actors, and denial of bail. The mission received reports that the campaign period was marked by reports of excessive use of force as security forces deployed tear gas, water cannons, and, in some instances, live ammunition to disperse opposition rallies, resulting in injuries and, in some cases, fatalities. In addition, the mission received concerns regarding inducement of the electorate in the form of gifts, including cash, goods, or other material benefits, particularly in competitive constituencies. The mission received reports of the involvement of the military in the electoral process, contrary to Uganda's 1995 constitution, which prohibits the Ugandan People's Defense Force from engaging in electoral processes. Stakeholders expressed concern over the ultra-wide order issued by the Chief of the Uganda Defense Force, later endorsed by the Electoral Commission Chairperson and the Inspector General of Police, for voters to immediately leave the polling station after voting, which contradicts the legal provisions under Section 31(4) and Section 34 of the Presidential and Parliamentary Election Act, which allow voters to remain beyond the 20-meter radius. The mission is of the view that allowing voters to stay within the legally prescribed 20 meters radius is a good practice that should be maintained as it enhances transparency of the electoral process. Of the polling Furthermore, the internet shutdown effected 2 days before the election, limited access to information, freedom of association, curtailed economic activities, and further disrupted effective observation by the African Union Commercial and Guard Mission. The timing of the internet shutdown further increased suspicion and mistrust on the electoral process. Uganda is party to several key international and regional human rights instruments that provide normative standards for democratic elections, political participation, equality, non-discrimination, and fundamental freedoms. The mission noted that at the domestic level, Uganda's electoral framework is anchored on the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, 1995. The mission noted some limitations within the legal framework, and in particular, absence of comprehensive laws governing campaign financing, further voting for the diaspora, and for prison inmates also remain excluded. Election administration. The Electoral Commission operates within a clear constitutional and legal framework that provides for its independence and mandate to administer elections. The mission was informed that the 2026 general elections were funded solely by the government of Uganda. The AU Commercial IGAD mission commends the government for allocating the necessary resources to facilitate the conduct of the elections, which facilitated the implementation of all electoral activities. However, stakeholders raised concerns regarding the domestic observers accreditation process, particularly delays, unclear criteria, and limitations imposed by the Electoral Commission affecting some civil society organizations. Additional concerns received were on the boundary delimitation exercise, alleged to have been characterized by limited public consultation, logistical delays, and disputes over demarcation. Women political participation. Uganda has a legal framework that provides for affirmative action for women to contest for the 146 district women representative seats and in other competitive seats as party or independent candidates. The mission noted that most women prefer to contest for the district women representative seats rather than constituency parliamentary seats. Youth participation. The mission noted that Uganda's constitution of 1995 put the minimum age of 18 years as eligible to register as a voter and allows any person who is 25 years and 35 years old to contest for parliamentary and presidential elections respectively. The law also reserves 5 seats for youth representatives in the parliament, with at least 2 being women. Some stakeholders reported that 32 candidates, as 25 men and 7 women, contested for the 5 seats youth quota seats. For the 5 youth quota seats, political parties cited high cost of nomination fees as a hindrance to youth contesting in competitive seats. Participation of civil society organizations. More than 50 civil societies were accredited to provide voter education and election observation. Nonetheless, the mission received reports on the constrained operating environment of civil society. In addition to other challenges mentioned earlier, 3 days prior to election day, the National Bureau for Non-Governmental Organizations also suspended a number of non-governmental organizations from operating. The media coverage of the electoral process. Uganda enjoys media pluralism. However, the mission received reports of biased media coverage, with opposition parties receiving minimum coverage from both state and private media. The mission acknowledges the reliance of media on the internet in obtaining and disseminating information, despite previous assurances by the Uganda Communication Commission to continued internet availability throughout the electoral period. The mission noted with concern the shutdown of the internet now still on the 5. The action has affected citizens' right to receive information, increases freedom of expression, and has also affected the effectiveness of our mission. Electoral disputes. In addition to the Electoral Commission's quasi-judicial powers to adjudicate on pre-election matters, the mission noted that Uganda provides for judicial adjudication of presidential and parliamentary election disputes by the Supreme Court, Court of Appeal, and High Court. The mission received concerns regarding the judicial handling of election disputes in the previous election, which raised concerns on public trust about the independence. Electoral security. Electoral security for the 2026 election was provided by the Uganda Police Force. In this regard, the mission noted the preparedness of the police force in providing security during key electoral phases, including the campaigns, guiding of electoral materials, ensuring security of the polling stations during voting and counting, as well as security of tallying centers. The mission was informed about the recruitment of additional police constables and the collaboration with other security agencies for the 2026 general election. The mission commends the Electoral Commission and the police for providing security for presidential candidates. The mission was informed about the recruitment of additional police constables and the collaboration with other security agencies for the 2026 general election. Stakeholders expressed concern over the ultra-wire order issued by the Chief of the Defense Forces, later endorsed by the Electoral Commission chairperson and the Inspector General of Police, for voters to immediately leave the polling station after voting, contrary to the permission provided in the law that allows voters to remain beyond the 20 meters radius of the polling table after voting. The mission observed that the order raises voters and stakeholders' suspicion on the transparency of the voting, closing, and counting of results at polling stations. Reports of intimidation, arrest, and abduction of opposition leaders, candidates, supporters, media, and civil society actors by the security forces instilled fear and eroded public trust in the electoral process. Election day observation. The African Union Commercial and IGAD election observation mission deployed 84 short-term observers who covered 488 polling stations to observe the opening, voting, closing, and counting on the election day. Opening of polls. The opening of polls was delayed by an average of 3 hours, and most did not open until 10 a.m. In some extreme cases, the polling stations opened between 12 noon to 1 p.m. For instance, at Kutuba Playground Police Station and Hope Step School. And a few other places. The delays were mainly attributed to the late arrival of polling staff and materials and the malfunctioning of the biometric voters verification kit. At about 10 a.m., most polling stations, presiding officers started receiving instructions from the Electoral Commission to do a manual verification of voters using the voters register. While most presiding officers received the instruction to use manual verification, others did not receive the same instruction. As a result, their station remained unopened longer than others, awaiting to receive instruction, some as late as 12 noon from 1 p.m. Some polling stations, such as Kampala Hill and others, opened quite late. In most polling stations, voters demonstrated calmness and patience despite the delay. However, two teams of our observers reported that at about 10 a.m., voters were starting to get angry and a bit agitated due to the delay in opening of the polling stations. Campaign materials were observed within the prescribed limits in many polling stations. But well, the Electoral Commission said that removal of those were the responsibility of the Commission, so we cannot blame political parties. Election materials were available in adequate quantity in all polling stations visited, even though most of them came late or arrived late. Most of the stations were accessible to voters with disabilities, and priorities given to the voters, such as elderly people, persons with disabilities, and expectant and nursing mothers. Voting process in a few areas where the biometric voter verification is worked, for example, at Kasuwa, TC, in Kaporele district, and also in Pasaja school, and also in Valley, that's in Valley City, that the kids work. The mission observed consistencies in the sealing of the ballot box. The mission observed inconsistencies in the sealing of the ballot boxes in some polling stations. In most polling stations visited, polling staff conducted themselves in a professional manner. The mission noted the presence of political parties and independent candidates agents. Party agents observed were mainly from the NRM, NUP, the Common Man's Party, Revolutionary People's Party, National Peasants Party, Conservative Party, and Alliance for National Transformation. Overall assessment of the competence of party agents during voting process was commendable. The mission noted that citizens observers were few at the polling stations visited. Participation of student observers is crucial to the reinforcement of the credibility, transparency, and legitimacy of the electoral process. The mission commends the Electoral Commission and political parties for deploying large numbers of women and youth carrying out their mandates without interference or due hindrance. Security personnel, mostly police constables, were visibly present in all police stations visited, and their presence was described as professional and discreet. However, some of our teams reported that some of the security agents were carrying guns. The teams could not ascertain whether those agents carrying guns were police or from the armed forces. In most polling stations observed, voters were able to cast their ballots in a peaceful atmosphere, closing and counting. While delays observed by the teams during opening average 3 hours, voting was extended by just 1 hour in most stations to compensate for the delay in opening of the polls. The usual practice is to compensate for the time lost in order to comply with the prescribed duration of voting. Nonetheless, the mission noted some polling stations such as Kaswa Primary School and few others closing at 4 p.m. despite the extension of 1 hour. No external interference was observed in all the stations witnessed during our counting process. The presence of security personnel was observed, and they were quite professional. Party candidate agents were present in all polling stations observed during the closing and counting process, and these include the NRM, the NUP, FDC, NDP, SDP, CP, UPM, CMP, the Common Man's Party, ROPP, ANT, and independent candidates. In some polling stations, voters were also allowed to witness counting within the prescribed 20 meters limit. The presiding officers publicly announced the results for the stations at the end of the counting process. Then party agents signed copies of the result sheets and were provided with a copy of the results. The mission reported that the closing and counting process in polling stations observed were peaceful, orderly, and conducted in a transparent manner. However, one team of the mission observed the use of tear gas to disperse crowds that were becoming a bit unruly at Luwero LDA Lumu zone. No official complaint was received during the counting process in all polling stations witnessed. The African Union Committee and IGAD admission notes that at the time of issuance of this preliminary statement, the tallying process is still ongoing, so we cannot comment at the closing of tallying. Commendable practices. Let us look at practices that were quite commendable. Based on our observation of the electoral processes thus far, the African Union Commission and IGAD mission summarized the following as constituting commendable practices. 1. The calmness by the Ugandan citizen towards the polling staff despite the delay in the opening. 2. The provision for political parties and candidates with voters registered increase their monitoring of the vote, thereby strengthening their trust in the process. 3. The high representation of women and youth among polling staff and agents advance the principles of inclusiveness. Conclusion and recommendations. The mission commends the Republic of Uganda's effort for undertaking regular elections. The 15th January 2026 was delivered in an environment that stakeholders considered to be calm compared to 2021 elections. However, the mission is concerned with reports of harassment, intimidation, and arrest of opposition leaders, candidates, supporters, media, and civil society actors, as well as the suspension of non-governmental organizations and the internet shutdown. To support Uganda's continued democratic consolidation and alignment with its national laws, continental, regional, and international standards, the mission offers the following recommendations. Recommendations to the government. The government should prioritize the ratification of the African Charter on democracy, elections, and governance to reinforce Uganda's commitment to continental democratic norms. 2. The government should safeguard the right to information, fundamental freedoms of expression, assembly, association throughout the electoral cycle in line with constitutional and international obligations. 3. The government should refrain from suspension of internet access close to the election and devise alternative mechanisms of handling potential security threats as opposed to imposing a total nationwide internet shutdown. 4. The government should provide conducive and favorable environment for operations of civil society, traditional and new media, as well as the opposition parties as key actors in delivering credible and transparent elections. To the Parliament of Uganda, the Parliament should undertake comprehensive and inclusive electoral reforms ahead of official elections through broad-based consultation with political parties, civil society organizations, and other stakeholders to address persistent legal, institutional, and operational gaps identified across the electoral cycle. The proposed legal reforms should also consider the following. A. Enacting a campaign financing law that provides for clear spending limits and effective enforcement mechanisms to curb the commercialization of elections. B. Reviewing and passing a comprehensive policy and framework governing the utilization of technology in elections. C. Review the Constitution and election laws to strengthen the independence of the Electoral Commission by reconsidering the process for appointment of the members. To the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission should ensure the consistent application and respect of the Constitution and electoral laws without any interference. 2. The Electoral Commission should improve and observe election nomination procedures to address the pitfall of denomination of candidates duly nominated. The EC should fully finalize the nomination process before printing of ballot papers. 3. The EC should consider a waiver or reduction on the payment of nomination fees for women, youth, and candidates with disabilities to incentivize and enhance their participation in competitive seats. 4. The EC should disaggregate electoral information, including on disability status, to allow targeted provision of sign language, ramps, and accessibility adjustments. 5. The issue should facilitate early setup of the polling station through timely delivery of material to allow voting to start on time in line with the 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. window. 6. The agency should conduct robust test run of new technologies such as the BVV case before voting day to ensure their effective use on the election day. 7. The agency should compensate equal time lost in each polling station in line with national and regional best practice. 8. The agency should consider providing shifts in the polling stations to cultivate favorable and inclusive voting environment for voting officials, voters, and other stakeholders. 9. The agency should invest in disaggregating election data based on the age, the gender, and disability status. Security agencies. Security agencies should operate within the law and mandate in a manner that is proportionate, impartial, and respectful of human rights to ensure that electoral security measures do not create an atmosphere of fear, curtail human rights, fundamental freedoms, and undermine political participation. 2. Security agencies should refrain from issuing directives on election-related issues that are not within their purview to do so. I will say so because one of the most controversial things that came in was the issue of after voting, the law says stay within 20 meters radius. But then the chief of the Ugandan Defense Force was the first person that was quoted that issued that when we voted to leave, contrary to the law. And this is coming from the very the head of the military, created so much tension in the country. If probably that statement was issued by the East First, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, which have the authority to do so, citizens would have taken it differently. So security agencies not make statements on election-related issues that are not within their purview to do that, so that citizens will not be apprehensive. Political parties. Political parties are encouraged to promote internal party democracy, introduce quotas in all leadership positions, and equitable access to campaign resources, particularly for women, youth, and candidates from marginalized groups. This is an interim report presented to you today, but the final report, like tradition of AU commercial and guide, will be ready in a month's time. And that report will also be sent to the government of Uganda and a copy to key stakeholders like the Electoral Commission and security authorities. I thank you all.